I'm so glad you all are here tonight. I got to meet a few of you. I certainly didn't get to meet all of you, but we are so glad you're here. I'm Julie Coonrod. I'm the interim dean at Anderson School of Management, and what an honor to be here tonight. So it has been way too long for Anderson to recognize a woman CEO. So very excited for Kimberly Corbitt to serve as the first woman speaker at the McKinnon CEO Series. And you can give it up one more time, just like that. I talked to Kimberly briefly on the phone to just speak about this honor, and I could tell quickly that we could be fast friends. So really excited to have Kimberly here tonight. She was born in Indiana. She loves leading mission-based companies and developing healthy company cultures, some of which I've heard about from talking to you all this evening. She founded and scaled her first company, Santa Lucia, which serves adults with development disabilities throughout the state of New Mexico and employs over 200 amazing people. She led the commercialization and global launch of Build with Robot's Breezy One autonomous disinfecting robot. She is a self-professed badass, interested in working with other badasses, so I see quite a few of you out there. She's currently the CEO of Biscochito Incorporated, focusing on serving the home healthcare needs of multiple communities with a significant focus on the well-being of its employees. Please welcome an unconventional CEO lecture from Kimberly Corbitt.
So luckily for all of you, I'm bringing more than just a vagina to the stage tonight. First, I acknowledge the Native Indigenous peoples and tribal nations, including the Tewa Pueblo peoples, and our neighboring tribal nations have stewarded through time immemorial and a millennium of generations, the lands and waterways of what is now the city of Albuquerque. I also acknowledge the investment that Native peoples have made in my life and in relationships with me, and thank them for the beauty that I have found within myself through those relationships. If you are here tonight, it is either because you care a lot about business or because you care a lot about me. Either way, thank you so much for being here. I am honored and I'm delighted. I hope that you enjoy this story, which tells a little bit of my cultural history. In 1863, Henry Ford was born in the farmlands of what would later become America's Rust Belt. America is connected by railroads, but for people who work in agriculture and live far from the stations, life is isolated, difficult, and often very dangerous. Ford wanted a different life for himself and for all of working class America, and he followed his engineering skills from the letter A all the way to the letter T to create the first car for the everyman, the Model T. The reliable and affordable car becomes available to the masses. Very quickly, demand exceeds supply. Ford then creates a pathway to optimize production by simplifying every task so that there was little or no training needed for the employees. Even a one-armed man could do a lot of the parts of building a Model T. With the success of the Model T and the assembly line, profits go way up. Ford wants to once again increase wages for workers who are already making more than anyone else in the field. And he wants to lower the price of the Model T to make sure everyone in America has access to safe transportation. The Dodge brothers are minority shareholders in Ford Motor Company, and they have different ambitions. They sue Ford. And in a landmark case, the Michigan Supreme Court agrees with the Dodge brothers that shareholder rights are greater than the rights of either employees or customers of a company. And this establishes shareholder primacy. This ruling eases the path for shareholders to dominate the interest of corporations going forward. The domination of shareholders adds to the already heavy burden on workers. As part of the New Deal, President Roosevelt enacts the Labor Protection Act. However, Southern lawmakers from former slaveholding states intentionally exclude agricultural and domestic workers from these protections. The people who do the most essentially life-sustaining work in our nation do not have a protection from the hierarchy of business structure and the pressure of shareholder primacy. By the mid-1970s, wealth was starting to become concentrated, but a factory job was still a ticket to a comfortable life. This is the life I was born into. In the mid-70s, I was born into the underbelly of the Rust Belt, in the RV manufacturing capital of the world, Elkhart, Indiana. I grew up on public assistance, and I worked nights hand soldering printed circuit boards in a factory to pay my way through community college, where I studied education. One of my professors told me that children will learn regardless of the environment they're in, and a lot of the time, they learn in spite of their teachers and in spite of that environment. I took my professor's words to heart and stepped into a world of fringe educators where we collaborated with our students to discover the best environment to foster their learning and build our community. Next, I ventured into the world of corporate America, and I learned quickly that I could play the game pretty well. It was an educational time for me as a business person, and it gave me the means to start my own company. In 2005, I started a company that provided residential and community supports for people with developmental disabilities throughout the state of New Mexico. We were funded exclusively by the state and federal government. The work is really fulfilling and beautiful, but working as the buffer between the people doing the work and the hierarchy controlling the work put a huge amount of pressure on us. In 2018, the core team and I began to actively dream about what it would look like if we could support the most vulnerable among us without the pressure of that hierarchical system on us. And in 2022, we sold our successful and established company and invested those resources and all of our hearts into building Biscochito. Having seen how caregivers are beaten down by poor working conditions and culturally accepted practices of abuse and disrespect, we begin an organization driven to change the way caregivers are valued. Somewhat naively, we thought we could use the existing hierarchical structure and add things like benefits and paid time off and support groups, and that would be enough. What we learned was that we couldn't gain the trust and engagement of these essential workers while still operating in the hierarchical system that had crushed them for more than a century. The systems and containers that we have in place are crushing so many of us. Just like in the classroom, when I asked my students what they needed, when we explored what would create the most beautiful environment for their learning, we started to do that at Biscochito. And we started to explore what would support the most beautiful work and the most beautiful care. The existing command and control hierarchical structure doesn't serve our work. Rather, it crushes the people doing the work. For our work to be excellent, to be beautiful, we are creating a new container. A container that's structured like an aspen grove, with thousands of seemingly separate trees, supported and being supported as part of a whole. We're inspired by Jack Stack's approach to open book management in the great game of business, by Tony Hsieh's implementation of holacracy at Zappos, the research and teachings of Jim Collins, Brene Brown, Simon Sinek, and Adam Grant, and by Stoic philosophy and bell hooks. Thank you all so much.
Well, thank you all again for coming. My name is Rob Del Campo. I'm the Senior Executive Director of Corporate and Community Engagement at the Anderson School of Management. And for the second half of our evening tonight, I'll be interviewing Kimberly Corbitt, CEO of Biscochito. Awesome performance.
Thank
you.
You.
That was amazing. One more round of applause.
This is a very, obviously because most of these people are my friends, but this is a very friendly audience.
Well, we like it. We like for it to be a friendly audience. And in staying with the theme of your appreciation for the people that you work with, let's give it one more round of applause for the cast and crew today. Just awesome. That's going to be hard to top. I don't see many
You
of our
don't have to.
Okay. I like it. I like it. So Kimberly, let's get a little bit deeper. And so traditionally these CEO speaker series things, it's someone comes up front and they talk about what happened, and I was 8 years old and I broke my arm and this sort of thing happened, blah, blah, blah. And then we evolved to a little bit more of a conversational piece here, and you've just transcended and taken it to a new level. But let me give you a chance, just reflections on your piece that you put together. I know we've been talking about it for a while, and you've put a lot of time into it with your team here. So what do you think? What do you hope is the impact of what you've just presented? And give us a little more about how Biscochito has really evolved to really thinking about caretaking from a multiplicity of perspectives. It's not just about taking care of clients, but taking care of employees as well.
So we did this whole thing for two reasons. One is because I recently had a concussion and I was pretty sure I wouldn't be able to talk for that extended period of time. And everything we do at Biscochito is about support and supporting one another and supporting other people. And I needed support. I needed support to figure out what I wanted to say and how to say it. And Adam Channing-Procrasso was massively supportive for me with that. And then the rest of the crew came together really beautifully. The second goal for me in doing this, is that I wanted to meet the opportunity with full authenticity. And somehow this felt much more authentic to me than standing up and just verbally explaining things. This felt like my truth. And luckily I had friends to help me tell it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I would say, yeah. Well, you're certainly an ambitious person, to say the least, right?
Yes.
And I think you met the challenge here, so great work. So let's go deep here. We've talked many times, and I think a little bit about the message you're talking about in the presentation earlier is sort of an anti-capitalist approach to business, right? So how do you rectify that, with sort of the pressures of the world of, profit centers and exits that you've all experienced and all this sort of thing? So how do you place that in your mind of, this is really my truth is the anti-capitalist nature of what you do, but you're still operating in the capitalist society of the United States?
I mean, here's the thing, right? We made it up. Ford made stuff up. We made everything that we're living in right now is a product of all of us. We created it. Our parents created it. Our grandparents, you know, it's all made up. We can just make up something different. It's okay.
And there's nothing really holding you back, right?
No one's going to get you if you do it differently. Like, no one's coming for you. Very truly, no one is coming for you if you decide to like take a different road. They don't care. Just do what you want.
Awesome. Well, you definitely do what you want, and I love it. It's great. So where does this come from? I mean, where do you come from? Where do you get this sense of, you know, your ability to just say, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want, and if you want to call it anti-capitalist, that's fine, or you want to call it, you know, traditional entrepreneurship, that's fine too. But how do you learn this from an early age?
Well, you don't. You learn what you're taught from an early age, and then you unlearn and figure other things out and rediscover like what matters to you in your heart. So you take the time to really think like, is this path rewarding me? Is it feeding my soul? How is it affecting the people around me? Like, what's really going on here? And for me, I really like being uncomfortable. I'm really okay with discomfort. I find it to be a generative space that is often incredibly rewarding. And I'm less comfortable with other people's discomfort. And as a leader, I've long prioritized the comfort of the people who I work with. And I think as I've grown and realized that if we can all be a little bit uncomfortable, we can all actually be so much happier, and our work can be so much more fulfilling and so much more rewarding and so much more beautiful. Yeah, I would say just being uncomfortable is where it's at.
So then talk to me a little bit about some of the other roles you have. Your family's here tonight, mm-hmm. right? How do you impart this on your kids? How do you bring this home? How do you cross that barrier between work and home, which I'm guessing you don't do a particularly good job of? Because it's just who you are.
No, I just am who I am, and I think I'm doing a decent job of being true to myself on a really regular basis, and I celebrate when that happens for the people that I love, when they are being authentically themselves and when they are moving in a way that feels good and powerful to them. Whether it's in the workplace or at home. And there's a lot that goes into relationships when everyone's showing up authentically, and a lot of talking about how it works and how we figure that out together. And it seems to go well. I like it. I don't know.
We have, they showed up tonight. They're here on time. That works. That's a big win. So Biscochito and what you have put together in terms of how the company is designed and the role of the employees in the company is really unique. And we got a little bit of it from the presentation, but talk to us a little bit more, because you're so passionate about it, which is the best part, right? About how you see the value of those boots on the ground caregivers and what you guys are providing for those folks and what you view as really the core fabric of the company and the core competence that you guys have as you continue to grow your company and move into other markets.
I'm just thinking of a few different ways to go into that question. Half of all Americans right now work in low-paid service jobs. Fully half. Half of all Americans work in low-paid service jobs. And I'm not an economist, and I'm not like, I mean, you saw I work nights in a factory to go to community college, so I don't have all the words for everything, but it's a hard life. Supporting your family when you're living paycheck to paycheck is actually not a fun way to live. And I also live in a city where people are artists, and there are a ton of artists, and people sacrifice huge amounts for their art. And I think about work and business as art. And the people who can make that work the most beautiful are the people who are closest to the actual work, the ones doing the work. And when people are working in those low-wage jobs, not only are they not rewarded financially, but they're not given a lot of agency or autonomy around the work they do. And the work suffers as a result. You know, they suffer as citizens of our country, and the work suffers. And we want our work to be beautiful. At Biscochito, we want the care that we provide to be exceptional. We want it to be heart-led. We want it to be well-supported. And we want the people who are doing the work, who are closest to the work, to be able to make the decisions about the work and about the care that's provided. So when I said like that we're inspired by Jack Stack and open book management, it's because systems like that or using something like that gives such a clear picture to the people who are doing the work, so they know if our group of caregivers who supports this individual needs a sub to come in, this is how it affects the bottom line. If we need someone to go into overtime, how do we make those decisions? How do we schedule? Our goal as an organization, as an organism, is that the people doing the work have the information they need to make critical decisions when they need to be made in service to the work. And building an organization that supports that is challenging and interesting, and it's challenging on a lot of levels, and it's wildly rewarding. I don't know, did I answer your question?
Well, sure.
I feel like I just was thinking, I sort of just said a lot of words. I don't know how close I was to the question.
No, they were all good words. We'll take them.
Okay.
Check mark. Well, that reminds me, so I think I met you almost 2 years ago, right? We kind of sat down for the first time, and you laid out this analogy that, we've kind of refined into this concept of the octopus rules, right? And you talked about how this is really your passion, not only with Biscochito, but in a larger perspective of all the work that you do. So could you share a little bit with the folks that haven't heard about this analogy, and maybe give us the Kimberly spiel on the octopus?
I'll try.
Okay.
So just like when you asked me, like, if you're doing business differently, and I said, like, nobody cares, because they don't. We have this way of processing information that comes to us. And it's the way that we've been taught to think and process and understand. And it happens in business and in our personal lives. And we sense through what we hear and what we see, and then we process it. But we're sensing so much more than that. And we have, it's almost like in a business hierarchy, you have your org chart, which is just this pyramid, and the CEO at the top, and you have a lot of middle management and then people who do the work. And we think we are that way too. We think that the CEO lives up here, and then we have some middle management that happens that gets the blood flowing, and then like we do some work out here. Neither of those things are necessarily true. We take in and process information throughout our entire bodies. And if we can think about a business organization as an organism more like an octopus, as opposed to, we have this top-down thinking for people and a top-down thinking for organizations and businesses. If we think about an octopus, In an octopus, their neurons, the synapses, the things that actually, the thinking things, are distributed throughout an octopus's body. They're thinking and responding over here. You know, they're changing color, they're grabbing something, they're changing the shape to blend in with their environment. Well before, and over here can be doing something else entirely based upon where they are. It's a different way of processing information. And we also have many ways to process information within our bodies and within our organizations. It doesn't have to do this. We can stretch out and do this in other ways. And it's very cool when we do. Like, it's really fun. And we know more, and we sense more, and we feel more. And it's just a very different ride.
It's a powerful analogy that you
Did I get that?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
it's the same that I remember, right? But no, I think it's a great way to think about things, right? We think too much about sort of top-down, very hierarchical managerial styles, which is where most of our learnings about business really come from, right? And you're changing the game, you're flipping it on its head and doing different things there.
That's community college for you.
Hey, well, great segue. So talking about education, if you haven't noticed, Anderson School of Management is a business school, right? And I'm very much of the opinion, and I know that you are, that you don't necessarily have to have straightforward business training in a classroom to learn things. But when I hear about how you approach companies, right, and then sort of your foundational work in working with young children in preschool, you talk about like child-centered, education, and then you have sort of this employee-centered, business that you've really set up. Where does that come from? What was the, I mean, you said that your professors really encourage you to do things and et cetera, but what's the educational moment that turned you to the place that said, I can do this, I can be a badass, I can run this thing, I am gonna do, a different type of job than just, working in childcare, or I'm gonna transcend this and do something different?
So it's always been through art for me.
Okay.
So art has always been a gateway to me for thinking about things differently and approaching them differently. And I don't know, I guess when I was a senior in college, I think The Matrix was out, or around that time. And also Spike Lee's Son of Sam. And when I saw Son of Sam, there was a moment when I knew that what Spike was showing, what he had on the screen, I understood it. And I was like, oh, I get it. I get what you're saying. And it was so exciting to me. And I had a similar, and I was like, and The Matrix, I think, blew my mind too. And that feeling of being like, oh, I hadn't thought of that before. Wow. Like that wow thing. And the thing is, like, when we're showing up with each other and we're open to it, we can have that all the time, and it can happen at work. And work just happens to be the thing I really, really love. I love work. I grew up like in a family of, we all just worked. And I always liked it. It was a place where I could succeed and I could do new things, and a safe place where I could start to get to know people and see genius in other people, like it was accessible to me. And those big artistic things that first I saw in movies and later I saw in museums and in music performances. I think just seeing the greatness of humanity is what it is. Oh my God, I just impressed myself. Like seeing someone really, truly do their work in a way that is really astonishing. And I like seeing it so much, and it's so exciting that I loved seeing when my students would excel at something and feel good about it. It was just really beautiful and exciting for me. And then when I started to lead companies, that was even better. just seeing that genius come out in people. It's really good stuff.
I mean, it sounds like you really have embodied that training in education, right? You continue to educate people, even though you're in different positions and have different opportunities to do that. And it's really exciting. I mean, I think that's the true mark of an educator, right? That you find the opportunity to do that. Try to bring
I was thinking about this on my walk this morning. I don't really think I'm a teacher. I think I'm a doer. And I like to figure out how I can make sure other people can do what they need to do so I can keep doing too. I don't know, maybe. I don't know if everyone else would agree. I was thinking about that for a long time on my walk this morning.
Interesting. Well, I mean, you're definitely a doer and you've done a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you could very easily be classified as an entrepreneur, and you've done a lot here in New Mexico, but you're from Indiana, right? You're in Indiana, you're teaching elementary, preschool age kids.
I taught middle school.
Oh, middle school as well. Oh, wow.
That was all I taught. I was terrible with little kids.
Oh, okay. Well, they're both rough. I mean, I've got adults. So how do you end up in New Mexico? How do you get here? How does this become part of your story? And how does it become so much a part of who you are?
I mean, it was luck, really. So I didn't like Indiana very much. I wasn't well suited to it. And I didn't know that I would like New Mexico. It was kind of, I just took a shot. And it worked out incredibly well. I've made astonishingly good friends. I have this beautiful family. I have the most amazing coworkers. The first person I hired is here tonight. I've been in relationship with these people for so long, and it's those relationships that have really created who I am. But I will say having them in New Mexico made it better. Something about the openness and the vistas and a little bit the ruggedness here works well for me.
So you don't think you would be who you are today without being in New Mexico? It's become part of you.
I mean, I would be someone.
Right.
It would be different. It would be very different. Well, I don't know. I think it would be me, but I like who I am right now. I'm really glad that I came here. I'm so grateful to I'm really happy with who I am now, and I'm so grateful for the people in my life.
Well, we're grateful that you're here. Obviously, you make New Mexico a great place, as many of us do. So a couple more questions, then we'll open it up to the audience. So start preparing for the Socratic method here. I'm going to call on people, but that was a joke, but nobody got it. That's okay. That's fine.
I did that when I was a teacher too,
Okay,
the Socratic stuff, yeah.
Pick it up there. So, you say you're a doer. I'm going to say you're an educator. You don't want to say that, but that's okay.
No, I'll take it. I'll take it.
Okay, I'll say you're an educator. These are really proactive things that continue. It's like a continual cycle of development and doing more and more things and changing. But, you briefly touched on it, and you exited Santa Lucia, right, a few years ago. How do you make that decision? And what goes into that? And being someone who's so invested in the people in those organizations, how do you rectify those things, and how do you be able to say, hey, you know what, I've done what I can do here, I'm on to my next sort of thing?
I took my team with me.
That's good.
I mean, that's how I did it. They called me and said, we're interested in buying the company, and the first thing I said was, my core teams, I keep my core team. And I didn't, before I talked about money or anything else, I said I keep my core team. That's the only way we can talk. And they said, okay, so I took their money.
All right, good for you, good for you. That works, and you're on to bigger and better things. I love it, I love it. Well, let's open it up to the audience. Are there any questions that you guys have for Kimberly? I can't imagine anyone would have any questions. This is just such a dull and boring situation. Yes?
In what way would you say that you have leveraged the capitalist construction of an environment that you're working within to catapult the novelty of what you're working with here?
That's a hard one.
I mean, you don't really have to leverage it at all. People are so beaten up by our current system, as evidenced by like the UAW winning record amounts recently, by the writer's strike, I don't have to leverage anything. Like, it's there. People are it just isn't working for everyone. It just isn't. I don't have to do a thing. I just have to I do have to do a thing. I just have to do the thing we're doing. And then people would like to do something a little different.
Well, follow up to that, how come nobody else is doing it? Why are
I
so
don't
few people
know.
doing it?
Well, it's scary, right? Like, it is. So I said, like, no one's going to come get you if you do it differently.
Right.
And that's true. But it helps when you have a group of people who embrace if you're not going to fit into the mainstream. Because it is very uncomfortable to do things differently. It's very uncomfortable. It's very dysregulating. You feel like you're going to die. You feel like you're going to fail. You feel like everyone's going to judge you. The way you feel and the message that, because we have these messages from when we're little, like, this is the right thing. This is the right thing. And then you do this and that's the right thing. And then that's the right thing and that's the right thing. And what we believe is that if we do all these right things, we are then safe. And that is not true. And saying that's not true and doing something else is just uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable, and people like to be comfortable.
Except you.
I'm okay with discomfort.
All right, other questions? Anybody? Over here?
Yeah, I was wondering, so like, more specifically, talking about like doing it, oh, got a mic, okay. I was wondering like more specifically about doing it differently, like, could you just elaborate on what exactly that means?
Yeah, so like at Biscochito, we are working on, and this is a very specific example, we're working on creating self-governing pods. What that means is that a group of caregivers who are supporting one person would have the agency and autonomy to decide scheduling, to make decisions around finances for their pod. So they would be able to see, in this month, our pod brought in $10. 8 of those dollars went to salaries, or 7 of those dollars went to salary and benefits for all of the caregivers. $1.50 went into administrative overhead, like what they're, and we have this little bit of extra money. What are we going to do with it? Do we want to save up and go to a conference together? Do we want to bonus out this month? Do we think we would like to train a sub to come in and support our pod, because we know several of us have vacations coming up. So we would like to invest a little bit of that money into strengthening our pod. Or say a pod has been working for a while and they want to bonus out more and they want to do more. So they decide, like, we think we could take on another client, but then we need one more caregiver to do that. How do we run those numbers? How do we figure that out? And what kind of support do we need to do it in a way that keeps the work beautiful, that keeps the standards very high, that supports them to do the work in the way they really want to do it? Because they're joining the company because they have a vision for how they want care to be delivered. They're caregivers because they love the work they do. They're incredibly passionate about it. And they do not want to care for someone and then have somebody else come in and do a shit job. They have spent 8-10 hours loving another human being, caring for that person. They don't want the next person to come in and do it wrong and do it poorly. They want it done beautifully. And we believe, all of us in our organization believe, that those people on the front line doing that work, when well supported with the information they need, can absolutely make the right decisions to do it better than anyone else.
Great. Any other questions from the audience? I got a couple over here. We're giving Kiana a workout, getting her steps in.
Just a second. So my question is actually about Anderson. We're here, gathered here by Anderson, thank you. And
You are sort of our center of excellence, right, for business in our state. And I would love to hear from Kimberly what she would like to see the Anderson School doing anew or doing more of to support the kind of business that she is creating.
I mean, I mostly want to talk to the students and get ideas from them. When I was introduced, Julie talked about when I worked briefly for a robotics company, and we worked at the Albuquerque Sunport, and it was during the pandemic. And I went in the middle of the night. I did most of my work in the middle of the night with the janitorial staff. And the janitors had already worked out a schedule that would minimize each of their exposure to COVID and keep the airport clean without anybody missing work. And it would make, like, they had figured out this way that they could track if someone had been exposed, how they could minimize exposure to others and keep everyone safe. And the city told them, we don't want to hear what you have to say. You will do this, you will do what we tell you on the schedule we tell you, or you can go clean the homeless shelter, which was full of COVID. They had figured out a solution all by themselves, and they were met with threats. I would like for all of us who care about business and who care about commerce, because this is how we work, this is how we cross lines. It's like, how do we get our food? How do we get our shoes? How do we get energy from one place to the other? Like, this is the thing that keeps us working together, that keeps us going. We spend so much time focused on exits, focused on executives, focused on big numbers. I would really like for us to focus on the genius of people who can figure out how their work can be done in a safe and sustainable way.
Worker empowerment, sustainability, creativity.
So more than worker empowerment.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't work for me to give, like, I don't even know if I have the right word for it.
You make one up?
It's just non-hierarchical. When we try and do it in a hierarchical setting, when I'm at the top of the org chart, or I'm in the middle of the org chart, and I'm kind enough to give somebody lower in the org chart some power, it's not my power to give them. It shouldn't be my power to give them. Their work, what they put their hands to, that is their power making that work happen. That is them doing it. And it's shifting the organization so that it reflects that. So everyone is moving in their power and in their genius in the right part of the organization, without this hierarchical structure where both power and resource are concentrated at the top. The top is not where the power and resource should be. There really shouldn't be a top. I mean, if you think about the aspen grove that we're building at Biscochito, it looks like a forest of different trees. It's just one organism. The largest living organism on our planet is an aspen grove. And it's a lot of different trees, and it's all the same tree. And they're all connected through a shared root system that shares nutrients amongst the entire organism. And trees can have like little microclimates. One can be a little shadier, one can have a little more moisture. It's all shared throughout. And whenever we're coming at it from that hierarchical mindset, there's just this cognitive dissonance. And that's why I stopped you on worker empowerment. Sure. Because like, it doesn't work.
Well, it's an efficiency model is really what you're saying too, right? I mean, this is a much more efficient way to look at the way we work and how the system kind of operates. No, it's amazing. I think we had another question. We're over here. Yes?
You actually just answered a little bit, but it's actually maybe a question It may be a question for both of you, in fact. So, Kimberly, with your experience so far, do you think it's possible to turn an existing company with a hierarchical system into an Aspen Grove? Or does it need to be started afresh? And that may be an Anderson School question, too.
I don't know. I'd like to find out. I'd really like to find out. I don't know. I think that the work we're doing right now, and some of it is like the Jack Stack open book management stuff. There's also a lot of emotional work we're doing. We have a woman here that we're working with right now, Nadia Brackett, and she is supporting our team in nervous system training because it is so wildly uncomfortable to do something so differently. Maybe. I like to think it could be with a commitment and a lot of work. And it's certainly work worth doing, and we're figuring out how to do it. So maybe.
Well, I don't have an answer, but I think if anyone can do it, it would be someone like you who's really committed and passionate about this because, like you said, it's not everyone who can feel uncomfortable. So I think it's definitely...
Everyone can.
They just don't like it. They just don't like it.
Everyone can. We do all the time.
Sure.
It's just like sitting with that and realizing that the world didn't end.
Right.
Like, oh, I'm really uncomfortable. And look, everything's okay.
Well, as our time finishes up, let's make you feel a little more uncomfortable. And we'll do something a little fun here that we've done for the past couple years and as part of the tradition of the CEO lecture. So we took some inspiration from the Inside the Actors Studio, James Lipton stuff, and just to add a little education to the evening. The questions he asks at the end of every episode is actually something called the Proust questionnaire. Mm-hmm. So Marcel Proust developed this as a parlor game that he would do with friends. Interesting. But we're going to go through them here. And so quick rapid fire answers.
Okay.
This is your Inside the Actors Studio moment. So, Kimberly, what is your favorite word?
Yes.
What is your least favorite word?
Moist.
This can start to go a couple different directions. What turns you on? PG-13.
Like making like getting it wrong when I thought I was really getting it right.
Wow, okay. What turns you off?
Homogeny.
What sound or noise do you love?
Any duet by Roberta Flack and Donny Hathaway.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Drones.
I've been looking forward to this question. What is your favorite curse word?
Fuck.
Okay. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I have to go back in time too.
Okay. Totally, no rules.
I want to work with Jacques Cousteau. Okay. So much.
All right. Now, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
We've been waiting.
All right. Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you, Kimberly, for joining us. This was great.